Hi, and greetings from Finland. I'm Eero Makkonen from A3 Finland Oy. In this presentation, I'm going to introduce the main findings and content of policy brief on the publication Guidelines for the Management of Industrial Wastewaters. This work package 5 of Project BEST provides recommendations and guidelines towards the improved management of industrial wastewater. The new guidelines were prepared by A3 Finland Oy, building on the views of best partner organizations, other studies of the Project BEST, and the comments of national panels of experts in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Russia, Poland, and Finland, who all pointed out national priorities and development needs. Industrial wastewater differs in its content, volume, and discharge fluctuations from domestic wastewaters. Industrial wastewater can cause severe problems for municipal wastewater treatment plants, operations, and problems for sewers. At worst, there is a risk of harmful discharges of nutrients and hazardous substances into local watercourses and the Baltic Sea, as well as endangering staff safety and sludge quality. For the best results of industrial wastewater management, cooperation is needed between industry, environmental authorities, and water utilities and wastewater treatment plants. The two main existing mechanisms for controlling industrial wastewater discharges into municipal wastewater treatment plants include environmental permits for industrial operators and contracts between the industrial operator and municipal wastewater treatment plant. However, the roles of these mechanisms are unfortunately not always clear. Based on analysis of the current situation and good practices already in use, the following recommendations have been given towards the improved management of industrial wastewaters at municipal wastewater treatment plants in the Baltic Sea region. Some recommendations for industrial operators. Firstly, industrial operators are always responsible for monitoring the quality of their wastewater and for meeting set limit values. The quality and quantity of industrial wastewater that can be conveyed to the sewer is defined by limit values in legislation, in environmental permits, or in industrial wastewater contracts between an industrial operator and a water utility. Secondly, on-site pretreatment is necessary if the industrial operator is unable to meet limit values and restrictions. If hazardous substances cannot sufficiently be removed, the wastewater should be delivered to a hazardous waste treatment plant. In addition to on-site pretreatment, the quality of industrial wastewater can be improved by preventative measures like optimizing production processes, minimizing the use of chemicals, and substituting chemicals with less hazardous chemicals. Thirdly, increased industrial wastewater fees cover increased treatment costs for water utilities caused by industrial wastewaters. And this can be determined by using a specific formula of increased wastewater fees. This ensures the implementation of the polluter pays principle, and it is important that households do not pay through their wastewater fees for increased treatment costs caused by industrial wastewaters, as this violates state aid rules. Fourthly, industrial operators must immediately inform the water utility on exceptional emissions into the sewer, because the water utility may then act by, for example, isolating the activated sludge process before the emission reaches the wastewater treatment plant. And then some recommendations for environmental authorities. Firstly, environmental permitting should be free from economic and political interests. The permits should be granted on a sufficiently high, such as national or regional level, where there is enough technical knowledge to give relevant limit values and restrictions for industrial wastewater quality, as well as independence from local interests and politics. Secondly, water utilities and wastewater treatment plants should be heard during the permitting of industrial facilities. Their expertise and points of view regards permit conditions should be taken into account by requesting their comments during the permitting process. Thirdly, environmental permits should include relevant requirements for industrial wastewaters. Legislation should also enforce the principles that industrial operators are responsible for covering the costs caused by their operations, and that industrial operators are responsible for being aware of possible environmental impacts and the risks of their operations. Then some recommendations for both environmental authorities and wastewater treatment plants. The dilution strategy is not an acceptable method of dealing with pollution. Unfortunately, this issue has been pointed out in some BSR countries. In addition to concentration limits, limit values can be given as loading limits so that there is no incentive for the diluting of industrial wastewaters to avoid exceeding concentration limits. Equal limit values and restrictions on the quality or the amount of industrial wastewater should be given to operators within the same industry sector and within the same sewer area. Secondly, the monitoring should be planned case specifically according to the amount and the quality of wastewater and pollutants and hazardous substances potentially ending up in the wastewater. The responsibility for monitoring the quality of industrial wastewaters lies with the industrial operator, but authorities and water utilities should define conditions for monitoring programs that include, for example, frequency of sampling and parameters to be analyzed. Thirdly, authorities and water utilities should be able to carry out inspections and take additional wastewater samples without prior notice. This is important for the cases if there is a suspicion that wastewater samples are not representative, or if there are disturbances in the sewer or at the wastewater treatment plant. The right for water utility inspections must be stated in industrial wastewater contracts. Then some recommendations for wastewater treatment plants and water utilities. Firstly, wastewater treatment plants should prepare for possible problems caused by industrial wastewaters and plan and rehearse needed actions beforehand. This kind of actions can be such as detecting exceptional pollution and isolating and bypassing parts of the treatment processes. Secondly, water utilities should be aware of the source, amount, and type of industrial wastewaters and conclude contracts with industrial customers with the highest loads and risks. Thus, it is recommended that water utilities would systematically map out the potential sources of industrial wastewaters. Thirdly, water utilities should set up yearly meetings with industrial operators and environmental authorities. This is important for building up and maintaining the cooperation between these three stakeholders. Fourthly, water utilities should keep contracts up to date. In many cases, however, outdated contracts cause harm to the sewer or to wastewater treatment plant. New contracts should be valid only for a limited period of time and/or include specific terms for changing the contract terms and for terminating the contract. And then some recommendations for policymakers. Firstly, in addition to industrial wastewater contracts, permits with limit values are necessary for industries discharging considerable loads or causing risks. If the management of industrial wastewaters is done only by contracts and without the support of environmental authorities, small water utilities can especially have significant struggles in getting the operator to follow the polluter pays principle through an industrial wastewater contract. Secondly, authorities should have sufficient resources and power to intervene with misconducts and non-compliances. Legislation should not prevent sampling of industrial wastewaters without prior notice. In several countries, these procedures of intervening the misconducts are nowadays currently relatively slow and infrequently used. Thirdly, economic and industrial policies should not be made at the cost of water utilities, wastewater treatment plants, and the environment. Transition to more independent regional water utility companies or centralized wastewater treatment is one possible solution for preventing local economic and industrial policy from affecting the management of industrial wastewaters. Then the main purpose of controlling industrial wastewaters should not be in achieving financial benefit, but preventing pollution. Unfortunately, in some Baltic Sea region countries, it can be seen that the current principles of setting limit values and monitoring programs aim at collecting maximal fees, whereby more efficient on-site pretreatment might even be considered to be a negative trend. Then last point, to support the utilization of the best available knowledge in the regulation of industrial wastewaters, limit values and terms of sanctioning should be harmonized nationwide. And one option is to establish limit values in national legislation. This ensures that the limit values are followed throughout the country. Another option is to publish national guidelines containing recommendations for limit values, monitoring programs, industrial wastewater fees, and the contents of industrial wastewater contracts. Here was a short introduction to the content of the policy brief that can be found from homepage of Project BEST in 6 different languages. In the policy brief, you will find more detailed backgrounds and arguments of the findings. The full report, Guidelines for the Management of Industrial Wastewaters, can also be downloaded from the internet pages of the Project BEST. The guideline report contains recommendations for the whole Baltic Sea region and also country-specific recommendations in national annexes. All in all, the better management of industrial wastewater is an important measure to reduce wastewater loading to the Baltic Sea, but it is not a simple task. Yet, I'm confident that the situation will be improved in the Baltic Sea region gradually by following the given guidelines. Thank you for your attention.